The U.S. mainland to Hawaiian Islands is an extremely lucrative market. Most airlines use high-capacity aircraft on these routes multiple times per day, and United is no exception. There is one thing that does make United a bit different, however, and that is the cabins they use for Hawaii. Essentially, before United released Polaris Business Class and Premium Plus Premium Economy Class, they had 5 rows of a 242 Business Class and then Economy from that point back. All but a few 777-200s have been upgraded to the new interior, but they still operate a good chunk of the old interiors from largely San Francisco, but also Denver and Los Angeles, to Maui, Kona, and Honolulu. Today, we are at Los Angeles, LAX, getting on board one of these unique, old-school United Airlines aircraft out to Honolulu. Our journey begins at Terminal 7 at Los Angeles, which is home to United Airlines. LAX serves as a hub for United Airlines, although it's their second smallest hub, only ahead of Guam. We go first to the Premier Access check-in area, as we'll be traveling in United first to Honolulu. Essentially, the same seats marketed as business when international are marketed as first when domestic. From there, past the global reception check-in area and off to security. Security at LAX can get extremely busy at times, but this time of day, with my clear and pre-check, I got through security in about 5 minutes. Once up the escalator from security, we come across the gates here at LAX, where United uses the 70s and 80s, and then we can take the walkway around the airport to reach the other terminals inside of security, including the Tom Bradley International Terminal. Our first stop today is immediately to the right, once up the escalator from security, the United Club at LAX. Before we head inside though, a word from our sponsor today.
Now, if you like online shopping, but you're looking for things at a fraction of the price, you are going to love the sponsor of today's video, TEMU. Now, TEMU's website has a site-wide sale on a ton of items, some as high as 90% off. In addition, you get free returns. My stuff arrived 2 weeks after I ordered it, which was actually earlier than they originally quoted me. But if your stuff does arrive late, no worries, because you get $5 off your next purchase. They also have a free return window within 90 days, and also a price protection guarantee, so if the price of your item drops within 30 days, you can even get a partial refund on the stuff that you ordered. Now, TEMU's site has stuff from all different categories. For the most part, I stuck with the travel category. What you're looking at here on the table is everything I was able to get for just under $100, plus free shipping. For starters, we've got this toiletry bag. It's a brown leathery type material and has a couple different compartments and a little carrying hook. I also got this vacuum cleaner to keep my car clean, much needed. I got a dash cam which records in HD and can send things right to my phone. These 2 sleeves for my suitcases that can help keep it clean and safe while I'm traveling. On the same theme, I got this roll that looks like Oreos. It's really protectors for the wheels of my suitcases to keep them from getting dirty or damaged in my travels. This little passport book, which in addition to holding my passport, can also hold whatever cash or credit cards I need to bring with me. I got this big carrying bag, and while I'm not exactly sure what I'm going to have in it while I travel, it is great with a couple of very large compartments here for storing things and organizing them when I'm going on my trips. And lastly, even though it doesn't fit the theme, I got this bath mat here. Super soft, super absorbent. I used it this morning, it worked pretty well. So all in all, for $100 plus free shipping, it's not a bad collection of items. To get your hands on some items like those at a great price, go to the description box down below to download the TEMU app. Also use my unique link here to get some extra perks. In the meantime, I'm ready to go to Hawaii. I hope you guys are too. So let's get back to the main content.
The United Club access is interesting, as other Star Alliance status holders have a bit more privilege, but if you're traveling with United and your Star Alliance privilege comes from United, access is only complimentary to domestic travelers in a premium cabin on a flight between Newark and either San Francisco or Los Angeles. Other than that, you can purchase an annual membership or a one-time pass for $50. All that being said, there are some real nice United clubs around the world, LAX is included, not to mention the fact that one by one it seems as if they're slowly being renovated, starting with Newark's new and fantastic United clubs. Up the escalator, you'll find the large, single-floor space with great views of Terminal 7 and the southern part of the airfield. Luckily, at 7 a.m. the lounge is still fairly empty, so I was able to have some good seat selection and also made it a bit easier to film content. The first area of the lounge we passed through has plenty of seating, and I've seen it fill up, but this time of day was a little less chaotic. This area also is the only area without food or drink options, so people here are typically just working on their computers more so than feasting. Fortunately, the other good thing is that there's no lack of charging ports around the lounge. The next area of the lounge gets us into the main dining area. There's only buffet-style dining, but it is still a nice buffet that we will look at shortly. Across from the buffet, there's also a central bar with a staff bartender able to whip up drinks by request. The buffet is against the wall across from the bar and has a ton of great breakfast options this time of day. Starting off, we see the coffee station, where we have one on each end. Next to that, first up, we have a parfait station for customizing your own yogurt parfaits. Then was an assortment of fresh fruit. It just all tasted a bit sad and old. Then, if yogurt parfaits aren't your thing, there's also an oatmeal bar with assorted toppings. Then the section with egg salad and scrambled eggs with toppings for those. All it's missing is the hard-boiled eggs. Next is some bagels and pastries with toppings as well. If you haven't figured it out yet, this lounge is obsessed with toppings for everything. In addition to the buffet, you'll also find these tables in a few places throughout the lounge with simpler items like juice, coffee, apples, and cereal. Perhaps one of my favorite parts of the lounge is the outdoor terrace that's just past the buffet. I do feel that it's in kind of a weird spot with half of your view being the parking lots, but I guess that's the cards they were dealt with the location of the lounge. When it comes down to it, it's really just great to have both indoor and outdoor options. Rather than sitting outside where it was a bit humid, I grabbed a seat in a quieter part of the lounge where I could charge my devices and enjoy my breakfast, including what I thought was grapefruit juice, but was just an overly sugary strawberry lemonade that was a lot for 7 a.m. After relaxing for about an hour, it was time to head to my gate, which was at the far end of the terminal. Quick note, if you plan to use the restroom before boarding, use the one in the lounge as the terminal restrooms were packed and tend to have lines. Walking down Terminal 7 at LAX, we see United, and even more United. LAX does have their own Polaris lounge, but since we aren't traveling on a qualifying international route in business class, we don't have access to that today. Finally, at the very end of the terminal, we find our boarding gate. Because of how cramped it is and since boarding is soon, the gate lice is in full effect and it's tough to get anywhere. In addition, they started pre-boarding but then didn't finish. As a Premier 1K member with United, I typically enjoy pre-boarding benefits when I'm filming content so that I can get on there before it's too crowded and get some good shots. But they got through about half the pre-board groups and then just called for all first-class passengers regardless of group. So I was towards the end of the people to get into the first-class cabin. But at least there was plenty of bin space, so at least that wasn't the end of the world. Here are some clips I got on arrival in Honolulu, however, after people deplaned. You can see here the unique setup on this aircraft. It's United's old style of business class with each row alternating between facing forwards and backwards to maximize space. The main reason this setup stays on these routes is because there's much fewer business travelers to Hawaii and therefore many more personal travelers which usually travel with more than one person. So United can cram more seats in with this configuration and people traveling together can sit together. But if you're in a middle seat, in the middle section, you'll end up awfully close to your seat neighbor. I'll be in seat 3A today, which is a rearward facing seat, and since I'm traveling alone, I've got myself a seat neighbor to share the space with, who also happened to be traveling alone and wasn't too happy about me filming things, although I put in effort to make sure he wasn't in any of the shots. We do still have the typical United amenity mountain, but it is significantly smaller since this is just a domestic medium-haul flight. I do want to take a look around the seat, however, while trying my best not to disturb my seat neighbor. First things first, there's no privacy partition, just this hard literature pocket between the seats that kinda gives you privacy if you're super reclined. There's also a wide armrest between the seats that is shared by both passengers. And below that armrest is a small storage space. You just have to be careful if you have something here that it doesn't fall under the seat when you move it. In front of that is the entertainment remote. This is also a bit of an outdated remote considering it reminds me of Virgin America, but it still works just fine. Above that is the controls for the seat where you can adjust the seat back and leg rest individually or use the presets for sitting, laying, or chilling. In front of that is a small counter that really isn't all that big, but plenty enough to fit the drinks for my neighbor and I. If you do need a bit more space, there is this small tab that pulls out from the side to give you space for a drink or so. It's also located right next to the headphone jack. Then the tray table pulls out of the center console and folds out. Unfortunately, mine didn't sit entirely flat once there was any weight on it. On the front of the center console is an assortment of plugs including a USB and universal charging port. One of my favorite things with United planes is that overhead you do have individual air vents for climate control in flight. In front of you is your seatback TV, which does seem to look a bit older than the current TVs, but we'll look at that in flight. Below that is this small ledge that, if I'm being completely honest, is somewhat useless as you can't really put anything else on it. Continuing south, we have the brown leather footrest, which does give the seat a nice accent. It is also very cushiony. Underneath that is a bit of storage space, although unfortunately it was still a bit small for me to fit my backpack in. I would have taken some items out and put the backpack in the overhead bins, but as we've seen, there isn't really any storage for those things that I could take out. What I will say is that this seat has legroom. I mean, there's so much space I couldn't even reach the footrest unless I adjusted the seat into a relaxed position. This proved useful to get by my seat neighbor in flight, however. To the right side, I've got 3 whole windows to myself and a tiny little armrest that was only good enough to rest my elbow on, really. Looking through the amenities, where you do definitely get less than if this were an international flight, but we do still get the extremely plush Saks Fifth Ave pillow that's one of the most comfortable pillows in the skies if you like softer pillows. In addition, we get the Saks Fifth Ave comforter. We do not get the throw blanket or the gel pillow, but the Saks Fifth Ave pillow is still very comfortable, and the comforter is the larger of the 2 blankets anyways. United also has specific amenity kits only for their Hawaii flights. The main difference is the slightly tropical pouch it comes in, and the United branded carrying strap. Inside, we get the palm tree logo on the eye mask and some normal earplugs and dental kit, although they did get rid of the nice reusable toothbrushes. We also got the classic United headphones, which are noise cancelling, but really aren't anything special. And lastly was the pre-departure beverages in sad plastic cups. As we taxi out, a little about why these planes are still around. After all, United's Polaris business class product is up there amongst the world's best, so why do they keep a handful of this super old and outdated product on some of these 777s? Basically, Hawaii is a vacation destination, so most cabins that fly there are designed for couples or families traveling together. You'll also find a 222 configuration on Hawaiian Airlines' A330 business class if you watch my episode of the ones on Hawaiian Airlines last year. In addition, with this configuration, because of the sheer amount of economy seats, United can fit about 100 more people on these aircraft. This helps lower prices and get them a good market share of the Hawaii flight market. As a matter of fact, I got this first class seat to Hawaii for barely over $300. This product's found from San Francisco, Los Angeles, and Denver, but mostly Honolulu and also Maui and Kona. From San Francisco, there's also flights each day with the Polaris seats, so if you do want those, you'll be able to find them on the San Francisco flights, or the flights from Chicago, DC, and Newark. Just make sure to check the seat map to see which aircraft you're going to be getting, and remember that those can change. Now in the air and taking a look at the Inflight Entertainment, which immediately looks outdated and doesn't match any of the other entertainment screens in United's fleet. What you'll find is that of United's airplanes that have seatback TVs, which should be shifting towards almost all of them, they all have exactly the same look and content for the most part, except for this specific type of 777-200 and a few of their 737s. I actually found the content to be fairly similar to the rest of United's fleet. If I'm remembering correctly, I do think there are slightly different categories from their normal screens, but I don't think that it's too different. There's still honestly a good selection of content, both movies and TV shows, and while I can't tell if it's exactly the same as the other screens, there is still plenty to keep you entertained on these flights. The biggest problem is that there's no way to save things to favorites, therefore it becomes tough to find things that you want to watch each time. In the audio section, something I like that United offers on some of their airplanes is a feature to listen in to live ATC conversation from the flight deck, a feature that basically went away once seatback TVs became so popular, so it's fun seeing airlines that are able to bring it back in some way. The flight map is similar to what you'll find on the rest of their fleet. The good news is that it's still interactive, as I feel like all maps should have the ability to zoom in and out as well as move around on command. This map specifically is just a bit tougher to move and zoom, as instead of using the screen like a phone and swiping and pinching to move it, you have to hit the buttons for moving and zooming it. And lastly, there's a relaxation section that's on most United flights, so you can access a series of things to watch and listen for relaxation in flight. When it comes to Wi-Fi, I'm not sure if it's just this aircraft or all of these older non-renovated 777s, but there was no in-flight Wi-Fi available for this flight. About an hour and a half after departure, they came through to take everyone's breakfast orders. There's no menus for domestic flights, but our options were a continental breakfast, a quiche, or French toast. I decided to start my breakfast with a nice little mimosa. No more plastic cups, but a true glass for my starter drink. Then the breakfast was delivered. United does serve their meals on one tray, which is typically judged harshly, but I do think they get a pass for breakfast, as it's the meal that's most commonly served on one tray around the world, except for some of the world's leading carriers, who have a much more in-depth service like Qatar and Singapore, although it does sound like United might have plans to up their meal game in the near future. Pretty much no one slept on this flight, since most people were well rested with this mid-morning departure, but that didn't stop me from checking out what this seat is like for sleep. The seat does go fully flat and is fairly comfortable, although I still believe United's Polaris seats are more comfortable. With the bedding provided, there's plenty to make a nice bed, as the Saks fifth pillow and comforter are wonderful, although the gel pillow and throw blanket would make it even better. The room for your feet isn't great, as the footwell is a bit smaller than their newer products. Personally, I feel that sleeping on your back makes it a bit better, but on your side, there's a bit more limited amount of legroom. The main drawback is of course having to step over your neighbor in the aisle, although 9 of every 10 passengers at least on this flight were traveling together, so of course it's easier to climb over someone that you know. The lavatory really is nothing special, as it looks exactly as you'd expect an old, non-renovated 777 lavatory to look like. This lavatory is almost identical to the Air India Economy 777 lavatories, as a matter of fact, from earlier last year. The cabin crew on these Hawaii flights tend to be a bit more senior, but they do have fun. As a daytime flight to a major vacation spot, they decided to play some games with the people on board. I'll try to unmute it so that you can hear more about the halfway to Hawaii game.
If you could give your answer in Hawaiian time, hour, minute, and second, and our aircraft will reach the halfway point to Hawaii.
Essentially, each passenger wanting to play just had to give the flight attendants a piece of paper with their guess of the exact time to the second that we would reach the halfway point. They gave us our departure time and total mileage, and I recalled the captain telling us the total flight time would be 5 hours and 7 minutes, so I made my educated guess and awaited our announcement.
8 hours, 34 minutes, and 12 seconds. 8:34:12. So our first place winner is in 3A. Congratulations.
I was literally only a few seconds off of the exact time, but coming in first place meant that I won a Polaris gel pillow. Second place won a snack box, and third place won an alcoholic drink voucher. Before long, we were given pre-arrival hot towels and also handed out agriculture forms. No immigration on this flight as it's domestic, but they do monitor the agriculture to and from the islands to protect the islands from invasive species. Shortly after, the island of Maui came into view as we maneuvered our way around Oahu for our approach into Honolulu, over some of the bluest and most beautiful terrain on Earth. I'm going to stop talking for the remainder of our descent and let Hawaii's landscape do the talking for me. As far as final thoughts on this cabin, I can already hear all the comments about how much y'all are gonna hate this cabin, and you wouldn't be entirely wrong. It's definitely a cabin that serves a unique purpose, and they're only keeping a few of them around, only keeping it around because it can hold roughly 100 more passengers than the newer aircraft configuration. And since this route is mostly vacationers and not many business travelers, that means most people aren't traveling alone and therefore more accepting to sharing a space with others they might be traveling with. One thing I will say is that regardless of what you think about the seat, remember this was a first class seat for only 5 hours for a few $100s each way. The fare varies quite a bit on these Hawaii flights, but you can find it for $300 to $1,000 one way. Obviously, there are far better seats that you could take to Hawaii, even on United, so just be sure that you know what you're booking. If you want to be safe with United and guarantee a Polaris seat, make sure you're on a 777-300 or 767 or 787. Other than that, Delta and American also fly wide bodies to Hawaii with their Delta One suites and flagship business class products respectively. Basically, what it all comes down to is that the US mainland to Hawaii is one of the top-selling vacation markets in the world, and the competition for the route is off the charts. Some flights offer the best product to bring people in that are looking for the flashier ways to get there, and some flights offer the best price by increasing the amount of people they can fit in a cabin. One thing is consistent, however, and that is the second you step off the aircraft and feel the warm island air and the smell of paradise, the flight itself becomes somewhat arbitrary. Now, as we walk to the curb for the Honolulu airport, in my opinion, it's starting to show its age a little bit, and they have actually begun renovations to some parts of the airport, mainly in the Hawaiian Airlines terminal. But the fact remains that Hawaii's airports get the island vibe started the second you're off the airplane. The majority of the airport is open air, so you can enjoy the almost always beautiful weather while at the airport. Honolulu is the largest airport in Hawaii, as Oahu is the most populated island and home to the state capital, making it a bit more city-like and a bit less nature-like, like the other islands. Although not to discredit Oahu, as it's still an incredible place to be, and 10 times more tropical than anything back home. The airport sees a majority of its traffic from the US West Coast, especially the Bay Area and LA area, but also sees a high number of Asian tourists with a ton of flights coming from Japan and Korea. That's enough for now, however. I'm off to Waikiki for a bit before continuing on my next adventure, but aloha, welcome to Hawaii, mahalo to you all, and I'll see you next week.